Welcome to my office where I never ever work.
That's okay. This is my favorite room in the house, but there's no use for it.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Suzi Phoebens.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I am super excited to be talking with my friend Jenna MacDonald from there'sashoeforthat.com. You can find her on the interwebs at There's a Shoe for That. Welcome, Jenna.
Hi, Suzi. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm super excited to talk to you today. And do you want to tell people a little bit about what you do? We're going to be talking about traveling by yourself as a woman or a human in general, or with little children. So do you want to tell people why it is that you have so much experience with traveling by yourself?
Sure. In my day job, I work for a seaport, actually. And so I've had the pleasure of traveling around the world for my job. And so I tend to travel either by myself or with one other person, but I'm always staying in a hotel room by myself or might be coming to and from meetings, or basically just traveling around in general on my own. So because of my work travel experience, I've carried a lot of those things over into now my family travel experience. And traveling by yourself as a woman, regardless if colleagues are with you, there's just a few things that you should really always do that you don't think to do. So that's what I'd like to talk about today and share a few of my little tips.
Awesome. When I was thinking about this last night, I was thinking about every time that I've traveled by myself, which is a lot of the time. And I was thinking all these things that I do would be compounded so much by having a newborn and a toddler in tow. Like, I don't even know. I'm just thinking about getting gas in the car at night. And then you have these kids. Jenna's got baby Kate. You guys can't see her. I can see her. She's almost 3 months old. And how old is Landon?
He's 3.5.
3.5. So hands full whether you have your husband with you or not. But I know you two, you and Kate and him, travel around a lot on your own. And I'm just thinking, holy moly, you are going to have some good tips for us, because I can't even begin to think about all of the coordination that's going to take.
Well, absolutely. And you become to appreciate drive-throughs and pay at the pump and things like that so much more when you have children. I mean, recently on a road trip, I actually went into a McDonald's and ate while I was in there feeding Kate. But then I went through the drive-through as I was leaving to get a coffee because it was just too challenging to carry the car seat, carry the diaper bag, hold Landon's hand, and have a coffee was just not possible.
Yeah.
So, going into a restaurant and then, turning around and going through that same restaurant's drive-through is a little bit funny to do. But you just do what you got to do, and you only have so many hands. So, that's maybe a little family traveling tip that I can offer, especially if you're a single mom or if you're by yourself with your kids.
So off topic, but before I was a fitness instructor, after I left my job, I did a stint as a mystery shopper.
Ooh.
And one of the places that I often ended up having to go to was McDonald's. And as part of the shop, you had to eat in the restaurant or order in the restaurant, but you also had to order through the drive-thru. So I frequently was going in and ordering stuff and then leaving and then going through the drive-thru. And it's often the same people. So I looked like such a weirdo. Like, why is this girl buying like a Big Mac combo and then immediately going outside and getting in the car and buying like a McChicken combo? Because you had to buy one non-beef comp. It was so weird. Especially our local McDonald's is like a satellite one in a gas station. So It really has like 4 people on orders. So they were all the same people. So I understand feeling that oddity of being in a restaurant and then going through the drive-through.
Yeah, I just don't think it's the normal
no
typical thing to do. But
definitely not.
It certainly works.
So why don't you just dive right in and enlighten us on some of your tips? Because I have one and I'm going to save it for the end because it's ridiculous.
Sure. Well, as I was thinking about these, I was trying to think about them kind of starting at home and then as you would go from place A to place B, and then different things you might do when you're at a hotel and so on and so forth. So if we just start at home, start when you're packing, um, people probably don't think about your luggage as a safety tip, or just a tip in general for traveling. But I share often that I always travel with a carry-on suitcase, and typically a carry-on suitcase only, or a carry-on suitcase with a backpack. And I do that for a couple of reasons. And I guess just used to doing it for work. Whenever you're traveling by yourself, it's a really good tip to make sure that you can carry everything that you need to carry. So when you get to the airport, there's not somebody there to help you, and relying on maybe a stranger that you don't know, or people even at the hotel will ask you to help you with luggage, especially if you have bigger pieces. And just having that extra person follow you to your hotel room or meet you there, whatnot. Really, if you can just take that out of the equation altogether by having the amount of things that you can personally handle with ease, just kind of saves that whole awkward situation where you don't have money to tip them. You're not like on Home Alone and going to give them a piece of gum. Like, you know, you just kind of cut that whole situation out altogether. And I've definitely carried that over to traveling with kids. So, if you look on my Instagram or things like that, you'll see pictures of me with the stroller, the backpack on, and a carry-on suitcase. And that's it, because I can't handle more than that at a time safely with the two of them and with our luggage. So that's my first tip, is really just start at home and pack only what you can physically handle yourself.
That's something that I wouldn't think of, because I am one of the carry-on only people myself. So I never even think about people who have lots of luggage and they need help. So that is a really great tip. I only carry on luggage because I have had my suitcase lost and had to buy underwear in Times Square at 11 p.m. at night. So that's why I do that. But your reason makes a whole lot of sense for safety purposes, and you also get there and have your underwear. So
it's really a win-win.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, I guess we would move into kind of what you're going to wear, and especially talking about jewelry. I have always, before I was married, before I was engaged, I've always traveled wearing a fake modest wedding band. And I say modest because having this big honkin' ring on that is just going to draw attention to yourself is also really not that helpful. But having on just a band of some kind, you can buy all different kinds of like silicone bands right now. You can buy one just, at the dollar store even. But just having something on, it really is helpful on an airplane. So regardless of who you're seated next to, it may deter them from starting up a conversation. And it's just kind of one of those extra things that if people think you're married for some reason, they're less apt to like go after you. I don't know why, but it seems to have worked for me. And then the same thing, I guess, goes into kind of the location of where you're traveling. So especially as a guy, if you're traveling in foreign countries like Brazil, as an example, watches are a huge target there. So, not wearing this big Rolex watch when you're traveling to Brazil is probably a good idea, just to not become a target while you're in a cab ride or things like that. From there, talk about transportation from the airport or just different places that you're going to. I know myself, I'm always looking for a good deal. So if there's a train or there's a shuttle going, I tend to take that option to save on costs. But whenever I'm traveling by myself, I always take a taxi, or in the case where there's like a limo service offered, I typically take the limo service and pay the extra $10, because it's usually the most reputable drivers and the most reputable people that are doing that. So that's just one thing that I would suggest. I know in airports, you'll see like there's always a taxi line and a limo line. Mm-hmm. You'll notice, the limo line is always shorter. So one, you're standing there for less time waiting by yourself, and you also get kind of the best of the best in terms of drivers bringing you to your exact location. So you're not landing at a train station or landing at a bus stop and then having to walk from somewhere to somewhere potentially at nighttime.
And I don't think people realize that it's not always a limo. When you go to the limo stand, it's often a town car. Anytime I've gone, I've always got a town car. So you just
Yeah.
look like you're posh. You don't look like you're super fancy. And it
Oh.
is almost exactly the same price. And I do the same thing. I go right for the limo or town car stand because I had a harrowing experience with a taxi driver in New York City that I have not yet recovered from. So I try to go for, not to say that there's not great taxi drivers, but I always think that if they're with the limo company or the town car company, that they're probably a little bit higher up there in the care department.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually something that I learned my very first trip that I went on for work. I was traveling with my boss at the time, and he just said, always go in this line. The company will always be happy to pay the extra $5 on your receipt, to make sure that you're safe. And so I've just kind of carried that through for my personal travel as well. And sometimes, five or $10, you can't get that back if something happens. So why not just pay it? Think of it like an insurance policy to take the best approach you can.
Yeah, I took this taxi from Newark to downtown New York, and it was like a 1989 Crown Victoria or something. It was August. It was so hot. He had no air conditioning. He had all the windows down, and he was going like so fast. And just as we were getting to one of the tunnels, Jules, You Were Made for Me came on, and he cranked it. And I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. I'm very concerned. I had already lost my friend. We'd got separated. It was a whole thing. And we went through like all of the most janky parts of New York City. And then later that night we were walking, my friend and I, once I found her again. And she was like, oh, we went by this on my taxi drive here. And I was like, I have not seen this part of the city. All I've seen is like boarded up buildings and this man singing to Jewel in the middle of it was so bad. Anyway, it was so bad. So get a town car or get a limo, people. Just do it and save your sanity for real.
For sure. Absolutely. And now Uber is really popular as well in a lot of cities. So, just find somebody that has a 5-star rating or something if Uber is the method that you're going to choose to get from the airport or wherever else you're going. So if we move on to actually arriving at the hotel, you only have a carry-on suitcase with you and possibly a backpack, so you're able to carry it in yourself, and that's all good. But the next thing really comes to whenever you're standing in a lobby, and this one is a little bit less of a tip if you're by yourself because you're not going to say anything to yourself out loud, most likely. But if you're traveling with colleagues or a group, and this is really popular even with like kids traveling with sports teams, all the parents be like, oh, what new room number are you in? Or what room are you in? Or what room are you in? And there's a reason that the person checking you in didn't say your room number out loud when they gave you the key. They just gave it to you and it was written on there. It's so you're not announcing to everybody in the lobby where you're staying. So just try to be mindful of that and not ask your colleague or ask somebody that what their room number is right there in front of everybody. When, somebody who is trying to target people, that's just an easy place for them to go stand and hang out to be able to find out what people's room numbers are.
Yeah.
So just, kind of keep that in mind for yourself, but don't ask other people and put them in a compromising position either.
Totally never thought of that either. So wonder I haven't been abducted, really.
And this next tip is probably my favorite one, and I do it all the time. And I know a lot of travelers that I work with and people that I work with a lot, who travel on their own do it as well, especially women. And it's about your room location in a hotel. So most people always ask for the view and the room the furthest away from the elevator because they don't want the noise. Well, I ask for the opposite. So it really doesn't matter to me at all if I have a view out of my hotel room. I mean, I'm going to be there to sleep, and that's basically it. And I always ask for a room closest to the elevator. So the reason I do that is if you're getting off an elevator and let's just say there's another person, I mean, it could be another woman even, it's super, super awkward to follow each other down the
Mm-hmm.
hallway. And if you're at the end of the hall, that's like, it can be a pretty long walk where you're just awkwardly following somebody or they're following you. And especially if it's at night or you're in a big city or whatever, it just feels weird.
You
So,
always think they're following you, and you always worry that they think that you're following you, no matter where you are. If you're the person in front,
exactly.
you always think that, and if you're the person behind, you're like, oh, if they think I'm following them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really awkward and like, yeah, there probably there's likely no harm, but just to avoid that situation entirely, I always request to be close to the elevator. And if we kind of back up even one step, if I'm in the elevator and I feel a little bit uneasy with somebody that's in there, or I think that it's a little bit weird or they might be following me, then I may even select a floor that's not my floor and go to that floor and then just get back on the elevator, just to avoid the situation
Yeah, that's a great idea.
entirely.
Because most times people aren't actually doing anything, but you just don't know. There's always that one time where you get off on the right floor and then something, you had a bad feeling and something happens. So you might as well just spend the extra 40 seconds and feel safer.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have this weird feeling, like you probably have it for a reason. So just follow your own instincts, and you're always going to be best served by your gut feeling and
Yeah,
how you feel. So even if there's nothing that was ever going to happen, if you just feel more comfortable and you can sleep better that night, then it was worth the extra 30 seconds to do it.
absolutely.
And my last tip, kind of hotel related, is really just to lock your door.
Do
I know.
people really not lock their doors?
Well, they lock automatically whenever you close them. So I think a lot of people think that that's sufficient. But I had an experience in St. John's, Newfoundland a number of years ago where I had the deadbolt on, thank goodness. But this person came to my door in the middle of the night and loaded drunk
Ugh.
and they thought that it was their hotel room. So they were really trying to get in, like using their key and, trying, like banging on the door and like quite aggressively, like trying to get in the room. And had I not had the deadbolt on, like, I don't know if they would have been able to get in, but I certainly felt a lot better having
Oh
the
my
deadbolt on.
gosh.
I mean, it turns out that the person, like I said, was drunk and was actually at the wrong hotel.
Oh,
So
wow. So they were at the right room number, just not the right
exactly,
building.
exactly, yeah. So they were at the right number of room, but at the wrong hotel entirely.
Whoops, they were having a good night.
Yeah. So, but just to say, like, they didn't have any malintent. They weren't trying to do anything wrong. Just get into their own hotel room and becoming increasingly frustrated about the door not working.
Yeah,
But for me, as the person inside the room, it was
that's,
a little, it was kind of scary
yeah, it'd
because
be super scary.
this person's trying to break in, and like I felt safe because of where I was. Like I was in Newfoundland, so I just, to me, everybody's nice in Newfoundland. There was no reason to be scared. But had I been in a foreign country or somewhere else that I was really uneasy, like I just would have been so, so thankful that I had that deadbolt on, and I would have been even more nervous about it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm the weirdo that like puts the deadbolt on as soon as I get in the room and then will often try to leave the room without undoing it, and then am the person inside the room getting angry because they can't figure out why they can't get out of the room because I'm ridiculous. But yeah, that is a really good tip. And I mean, even if somehow they had a key to that room that didn't get reprogrammed or something, having that deadbolt on, even if they did get that door open, I don't know if that's even something that could happen, but having the deadbolt on would prevent them from getting the rest of the way in. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a really simple thing, but it's just something that you don't think about until somebody points it out. So
yeah,
we're pointing it out for everybody to
we
remember
are.
their deadbolts on their doors. Okay, so the one more that I have to offer is really good for anybody, anytime, and you don't necessarily even have to be traveling. But it's about being outside at night. So sometimes, especially in cities, if you're at a restaurant or something and you have to go back to your hotel room, you might be leaving at a different time as other people, or you may have been traveling by yourself. Um, you might be too close to take a taxi or to take an Uber or something like that. So, but you still shouldn't really be walking outside at night by yourself. What I always do is I always have somebody on call that I can walk and talk my way home.
Mm-hmm.
So, a good friend of mine, we always say we're talking each other home. So, during university, we used to talk each other home for whenever we were leaving work or leaving classes and whatnot. Often now I call my husband and he just talks to me for the duration of my walk. And all the way up the elevator into my room as well. So don't hang up just when you get to the lobby. But yeah, that's my last tip is really just if you can't take a cab or a taxi and you're going to walk even that short distance, just get somebody to talk you home. It's not complicated. Just do it. And then, heaven forbid something ever happened. Well, at least you can like scream and they can call somebody right away. So,
And, I think that's something that people who live in cities and bigger areas probably think about more than us out in the country where we go outside and get right in our car and drive to wherever our destination is and don't have to walk places. I know last fall when I was in Toronto, we kept saying, like, why is everybody, like, every single person you meet on the street was on their phone. And I'm like, what is with these people? I will do anything to get out of being on a phone call. And everybody is on their phone. And one of my friends said, I think that some of them, like, in the evening, were doing that. They had to walk home, so they were calling someone. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But country bumpkin here would never think of that because it's just not something that I need to think of. So,
well, and it's funny that you say that because somebody once made that comment to me about not having to do that in the country. And I said, where I'm from, you would actually be really well served to do that because you're not really worried about people, but there's certainly like moose and bears and
yes, true.
things
True.
like that. So at least if you're making noise,
Yeah.
you may kind of deter the animals. So yeah, just because you're in the country doesn't mean you're like fine to just do whatever.
Oh yeah, no, like I don't even like to go out to the green bin after dark. My one tip, and this is ridiculous, but I always do it. I very rarely get to travel with people. I'm almost always by myself going to events or going on press trips and stuff. And actually from 2012 until last fall, every airplane I went on by myself. I had nobody with me. So my tip is I always wear running sneakers when I go to the airport. And I always wear running sneakers anytime I'm out sightseeing by myself. I feel confident in the fact that I am probably in better physical shape than most people who are going to try and get me. So I feel like I'm going to be able to take off, but I'm not going to be able to run as quickly in sandals as I can in sneakers. Also, because I only carry a carry-on, running sneakers tend to be the biggest pair of shoes that I'm taking. So if they're on my feet, that leaves me extra packing room. But yeah, I always have my sneakers on. And in the airport, I always have my hand or my foot or something on my bag. And I am ready at any second to take off. Like, who's going to come after me at the Halifax airport? I do not know. But I am prepared at any moment. And I always carry a crossbody bag. And I have it, like, latched in front of me with my hand on it at all times.
Yeah.
And my wallet, I usually only carry whatever I absolutely require. So like my license for ID and whatever credit card. I usually only take one credit card and one bank card and leave everything else at home. So if I do get attacked or robbed, I only have to make a couple phone calls instead of having to call everybody for every card I ever have. But yes, running sneakers, always running sneakers.
Nope. Absolutely. That's a really good tip. And I do that as well. I don't think I've ever really thought about it as like a safety thing in terms of running, but you're so right. I mean, I feel like push come to shove, I could totally outrun a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that trip that I went to New York, it really scarred me for life. But on the way back home, on that same trip, I was back in Newark. That's when I got stranded in the airport for 24 hours by myself with no money and no nothing. that night that I had to stay there, a schizophrenic man, and I'm not labeling him that. He came up and told me he was a schizophrenic man and put his little ID card on the table in front of me that labeled him as such in the middle of the night, like 3:30 in the morning, came like asking me for money. And I was like, dude, man, if I had money, I would not be sitting here in this airport at 3:30 in the morning. But as soon as he sat down, all my bags, I just like swapped them in and had my hands on them, and I was ready to go at any time.
Yeah, no, you have to do what you got to do.
And sometimes, you don't even realize that you're in maybe a bad area when you're traveling. I know when I was in San Francisco, I was still on Nova Scotia time, so I woke up super, super early, and I went to see the Full House houses, because that's what you do when you're in San Francisco for the first time, except most people are not stupid enough to take the route that Google Maps gives them that goes right through the Tenderloin. And so I was going right through all the drug addicts area. However, it was like 6:30 in the morning. So, they were like all passed out from their excitement the night before. So I was fine. But even still, I had my running sneakers on. And when I realized, I was like, this area doesn't seem to be all that nice. Thought, well, at least I have my sneakers on. Anyone that comes after me again, I can probably outrun them. And then the next day I was with my friend who lived in San Francisco at the time and her husband, and I told them, and he was like, yes, please don't go back there ever again. I was like, yeah. But sometimes you're dumb and you don't know these things. So running sneakers are just a good traveling tip. Plus they keep your feet happy.
True. That's actually, I didn't mention that about choosing a hotel room close to the elevator, but for people like me who often choose really impractical shoes to be out for the evening, impractical meaning like really high heels or just something that I don't get a chance to wear during the day being home with kids and whatnot.
Right.
Having a room close to the elevator is also super helpful to not have that extra trek down the hallway.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've had a few trips where I wore not so great shoes, and so that was the number one reason I started wearing running sneakers. But then when I'm sitting in the airport time after time by myself, I think, yes, this is a good footwear option. I will be able to run quickly if necessary.
Yep. Well, as I always say, there's always a shoe for everything.
That's right. That was very on brand for me to bring up the shoe. It really was. So the shoe for when traveling on an airplane or by yourself is the running shoe. It's not as beautiful as many other shoes, but you'll be able to get away from any potential captures much faster.
Exactly. There's some pretty fancy running shoes out there nowadays, so you can definitely make up your game with the running shoe.
You can. I have some pretty Tiffany blue running sneakers that I got in San Francisco, actually, but not in that area of San Francisco. All right, Jenna, thank you so much for coming on today. Do you want to remind us where everybody can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on my blog at there'sashoeforthat.com, and you can find me on social media at Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, all at There's a Shoe for That.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Likewise, Suzi. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much to Jenna for coming on today. I really appreciated her and baby Kate both, actually. Make sure you check her out on all her social media feeds and give her a follow and let her know that you listened to her on the podcast and let her know how much you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have to give out props, of course, to producer Clara Oswald-Phoebens and assistant producer Rose Tyler-Phoebens, the Kitten Sisters, who are here in the recording studio with me today. I will talk to you next week.